Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the One Up Podcast. Today with me is my co-host George Martinez. I'm Milos Bukarica as always, and our guest today is Timothy Stevens, a wonderful director here from the DFW area, soon releasing his very first feature film based on the Marfa Lights, the mysterious, awesome, ghostly things. Man, that is super cool, bro. Has anybody ever done a movie on that before? Or are you the first? Because I don't know.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, guys. I really
Absolutely, man.
appreciate it. I don't know. And actually, well, let me take this back. Someone sent me a message because we just started an Indiegogo campaign
Mm-hmm.
to fund post production for the film. And someone that contributed sent me a private message and said that there's a documentary possibly about
Mm-hmm.
a old lady that's been filming the lights using like an 8 millimeter camera.
Oh my god.
It might be on Amazon. I don't know. I also heard some bullshit about Amazon mass purging documentaries off of their
Oh
Prime
god.
platform. So maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But yeah, I mean, as far as like narrative projects, I maybe it's the first. I don't know. That'd be cool. I
Dude,
haven't
that's
heard
a
of
cool
any.
story, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've heard a lot about the lights before, but like seeing it in a movie form, I can't wait to see what you do with it, man. That is awesome. But anyway, so how did you? Also, hi, how are you? I'm sorry, we didn't do that bit. Also, I mean, yeah. But again, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. But so how did you get started in the whole film thing, my man?
Yeah. Well, I mean, man, like a lot of us, I have been trying to make movies since I was a little kid. My parents had this big VHS-C camera, which was kind of like a medium format between like the 8 millimeter tapes and the big VHS, like full on
Oh, right.
VHS recorders. So it was like somewhere in the middle. Like the battery didn't work and I had to plug it in with an extension cord and like lug it around with me. So I had like 100-foot extension cord, so at least I could get some distance away from like a power source. And yeah, I mean, back then of course it was just me and my friends creating spoofs of all of our favorite movies. And sometime around late middle school to early high school, I really fell in love with horror. And I don't what was the movie? I'm sure you guys have seen the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the German
Yes.
expressionism film. Yeah, so
Yes.
my mom, she was she is a big film nerd, and she actually took a film course in college. And back then, it was just watching a whole bunch of old classic films, and so she introduced me to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and that really like blew my mind. Like for me, it was the moment when I realized that there was a difference between entertainment and art in film. And so I really latched onto that, and so I made my first. It was kind of a avant-garde slasher horror film in the eighth grade called "Don't Breathe," about a guy that finds his wife cheating on him, so he kills her with a hatchet. Yeah, it's and honestly, it's not online anywhere, but I watch it sometimes. Go, man, like I was like trying stuff back then, like that took me years to get back to that level of like just like willingness to experiment. So it's kind of a cool little film, but
Did you ever go through that moment where once you get more formal training, it's like you're almost less creative than before you got any training?
oh
Or it's
yeah,
like you just
no,
overthink it, right?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's what I mean, because I was doing like crazy stuff in this and like really cool like dynamic lighting and crazy camera moves where I did this like massive zoom out of a guy's eye to reveal that it was all in his head, because of course that's the twist, right? Um and yeah, it wasn't until like maybe my junior year of like college at film school at UNT in Denton that I finally like kind of regained that sense of like experimentation. So yeah, it's weird how that happens, but yeah. So I mean, that was the next step. I went to UNT, met a lot of great people that I still collaborate with, and I've been making shorts for the last yeah, since 2013, several years, and then the Ghost Lights is finally, I've been trying to get there for a long time, but my first feature film endeavor.
How long have you been writing this project? Like, when did you start writing it?
Yeah, so this project was interesting because I was working as a writer in development for a TV show that was kind of like a paranormal investigation show that it never got off the ground like most pilots do. But part of that was I researched the heck out of the Marfa Lights and really like the legends in the entirety of the Big Bend area out in far west Texas. And so that project didn't work out, and that story was just kind of rolling around in my head. And then John Francis McCullough, my co-producer and a co-founder of Spectrograph Films, 2020 obviously like wreaked havoc on everybody, and we had some projects that were bigger budgets in the like 700,000 to 3 million range, two of them that we had been seeking funding for about a year, and just no one has any cash to give now. The small like leads we had just like dried up. Not that no one has money, but everybody's like scared, so no one's willing to spend. So we finally just thought, okay, like what can we do ourselves? So I had a small amount of money in savings, and it was basically about $7,000. And I went, okay, how can I make a movie for $7,000? And how quickly can we shoot? I always loved personally to shoot in October. That's the inner goth in me, the emo that never died. So we set that as a goal, and then I started thinking, okay, that I did all this cool research on the Marfa Lights. Why don't I try to take that and put it into the story? So the story just kind of developed out of there. And I honestly, I conceived the story in a couple of days and wrote it in a week. It's the fastest I've ever written anything, really. I've taken more time to write short films before. Yeah, I mean, with features, like I've written a handful of feature screenplays, maybe 6 or 7, and I take months to do that usually. But I think like I just felt a lot of urgency with, I'm just sick and tired of waiting. Here's a goal, and I somehow access some sort of like superhuman writing mode where I was able to, pound it out. Yeah, so yeah, a week, maybe week and a half. It was super quick.
Gotcha. So this was so it was also recently you kind of wrote it, right? Not like a long time ago.
No, yeah, no, I because we set this goal in July of 2020, and I wrote it then. We shot it in October. So
that's funny. That's in stark contrast to our guest that I think is coming on after you, Jorg. He's got this feature that he's had in the works forever, man. Like years now, and like he's working all these other projects. It's like, oh my god, I've got 3 scripts, I've got all this, all that. Man, I think you need to get with him and tell him, hey, man, just do it.
No, oh I think his situation is like he has this project. That's like a passion project. He's like, oh, I want to hold on to this and make sure I do it well. But he also talked about doing like a couple other projects he has in the works before doing that one. Maybe. So hopefully he gets those into production soon.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I definitely have those. I've got at least 2 feature scripts that I wouldn't dream of like rushing into production. I wouldn't make it for less than like $500,000. That would be like bare bones budget. So I certainly have those. It's just so happened that the story, which is essentially a road trip film for the Ghost Lights, lent itself to a really quick write and a really quick filming process as well. And ultimately I decided to shoot the thing as well, so that really helped. There's a lot of like pre-production you can just kind of like skip when you know that you're going to be the person doing it,
of course,
because there's so much time that's spent like communicating with the DP and like trying to make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, I have a question on like the financing your films. You don't have to reveal like your sources, but what approach do you go into try and find funding for your film? Because you always hear stories of like the big directors, how they started off. Like Sam Raimi, he just started asking different dentists in his hometown to give him money.
Oh my god, dentists!
Yeah.
Well, and that's still, I mean, not Not in 2020, unfortunately. The dentists weren't spending money either, but that's still a valid method. I know a guy, really prolific horror filmmaker, that I'm sure you guys have heard of. That's what he does still. And so we tried some of that, and it just takes a long time. It takes years, and so ultimately with the ghost lights, I just like spent my own money on it. And I don't mind saying we deferred payment for cast and crew primarily. Most everybody is deferred, and so our actual production cost was only about $6,000, maybe 6.5, something like that. Which is, I mean, that's like Robert Rodriguez's first film, like that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like chump change type stuff. When you watch it, I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer. It is live on Facebook,
have,
and
yeah.
also, yeah, it doesn't look like a $7,000 film, and that's primarily due to really good acting, and also just like the backdrop, which is the big wide open spaces of the Big Bend in West Texas. So it lends this kind of like expensive look to it, because the epicness of the landscape. If we had spent $7,000 in a house, it would look very differently, I think. Just because it, you know, you want to spend money on set design at that point. Our set design was the mountains.
I've seen like Robert Rodriguez talks about that too. Like in order to like increase production value, sometimes just the setting around where you're shooting really adds to it. That's why his was unique, because it was like set in Mexico with a bunch of colorful buildings. As far as like El Mariachi, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, and as far as like funding for other projects, that's still something I'm trying to figure out. I found that a lot of people that I talked to wanted, and that goes for like executive producers, people with money, financiers, but also distributors who could potentially put up pre-sales for your film. They want to know what other films you've made, and time and time again I'd be like, look at this badass short that I made. They don't care. It's a different thing to produce a feature film in their minds. I'm not sure, practically speaking, it's different, but it's just doing it for more days in a row, I guess. But they want to see that you made a feature film. So ultimately, it just came down to the fact that I was like, if I'm going to get the big financing, I've got to have a track record. And, the only way to do that is just to make the film.
So how did you approach casting for this? I do know your lead actress. I mean, she was actually an editor for this place I interned at. Katriva, really,
Oh, cool.
she's a character.
Yeah.
So how did you go about casting, man?
Just people I knew, there again, when you're casting for such a micro budget project, I needed people that were as passionate about making their first feature as I was. It's a different thing to go to a seasoned actor and say, hey, do you want to be in my tiny project? I have almost no money for you. Versus with your friends, and you say, listen, like, if we can make this really amazing film and it's successful, and it makes money, we'll all get paid. Your friends are willing to jump into the fray with you, so to speak. And so, yeah, I just thought, okay, who are my most talented friends? And honestly, like, I made a short with Katriva 3 or 4 years ago called A Visitor, and it's this 1920s ghost story with these two girls playing with a Ouija board. And she gave such an amazing performance. I mean, she cried at the drop of a dime. It was incredible, and I knew at that point that I needed to get her into something else. And she honestly, I wrote the role of Alex, our lead in the film, for Katriva. And then our basically, we only have about 3 people in the film. The father of Alex, his name's Arthur, is played by John Francis McCullough, who's my co-producer, also an amazing actor. And then our name actor is actually Billy Blair, who has been in quite a few Robert Rodriguez films, like Machete films. He was in Alita Battle Angel. He was in both Sin City films. he was in Three from Hell, the most recent Rob Zombie film. And I met him at, do you guys know it's now kind of reformed, but the church, the goth club in Dallas.
I've heard of it, but I haven't
Yeah.
been.
Yeah, no, I met Billy almost 10 years ago in the church. I was just hanging out and I saw this guy like wearing a top hat, like sitting in a dark corner like a vampire. He kind of looks like something between a vampire and like Captain Jack Sparrow with that long beard. Back then, he was actually like braiding his beard. He had beads in it like Jack Sparrow. It was just pretty close to after I think the second Machete film, but Machete Kills. And anyway, so I just like talked to him and then found out he was an actor, and it was one of those things I just like kept in touch with him years later. And when I was looking for the character of this miner who's been living out in this ghost town, who's seen horrific shit out in the desert, he's traumatized. He was the character. He has a face that says I've seen shit. So, and he gave an amazing performance. He monologues in the film, and it's a far cry from just holding a machine gun. And I forget who he murders in the first Machete film. It's God, who is it? It's a really famous actor that he just like blows away at the end of the film.
It's been a while since I've seen that movie, man.
Anyway,
honestly.
yeah, he's such a good actor, and this was really a opportunity for him to shine. So,
so I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I met him at the same time I met you at the Fort Worth Indie Film Showcase. I think in 2016.
Oh, cool.
I think it was. I remember you did, what was it called? Resurrectionist, I think. I think that's where I met you after that movie. And I think I met him in the same thing because he was also in the same festivals, man. He's a nice dude. But yeah, man, that movie was awesome. So that's why I was like, you know what? I'm gonna follow this dude. I'm going to see what you've been doing. So, I've just been, slowly following your work, IMDb and Facebook, stuff like that, just seeing your stuff. And is this, I gotta ask about this movie, your new movie. Is it, because most of your stuff that I've seen is like set in the either Wild West or like older times, like 1920s for the other one. Is this like your most recent setting movie, or have you done anything else that's like modern setting?
It's still a period film because it's 2019. So that's a joke. But yeah, no, it's my first modern setting, and really, there's so much cost that goes into creating a period piece. I mean, I would only do period pieces if I could, but it's on a feature film scale, it just raises the cost so much. On a short film, it's easier for sure if you're only making a 5-6 minute piece. So, but yeah, I did it reluctantly, believe me. I would, if I could figure out a way to do a cheap period film, I would. But it's the production value is so important on a period film, and you must spend money there. Costumes, everything. I won't settle for a zipper and a corset.
Nice, man. Hey, you got any fun production stories from the set? Anything interesting you want to talk about that happened, or any big? I guess what's your favorite memory from set? I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of them. One of the neatest moments was the fact that we were filming during COVID, and up until that point when we started filming, I mean, I hadn't even seen my producing partner in since May of 2020, when right before the first lockdown happened. Yeah. So I'd really just been isolated at home, and so we all got COVID tested, and then we basically just hunkered down together. We stayed in the same hotel rooms and in the same Airbnbs, and just we didn't see the world, so that we could be together, because it is a road trip film is an intimate film where you can't really socially distance. We're in the car together. So like there's a neat moment when we were there in Alpine, which is really the last kind of vestige of civilization before you're just like into the desert, and then Mexico. And we're staying at this little cabin out in the the middle of this beautiful country, and there's almost no light pollution out there, and we're all after our 10th day of production. We only shot this film in 10 days, by the way. And we were sitting out under the stars, and the big, the Milky Way is up above us, and I think I'm smoking, even though I never smoke, and I was so exhausted, and we all looked up, and it was this surreal moment where, like, man, are we in the middle of a pandemic anymore? Like, here I am hanging out with some of my best friends, making dreams happen. And so that was a really surreal moment that was cool, that you only get from filmmaking, I think, that community. Another cool story is we actually saw the real ghost lights out when we were. Yeah. So that was crazy, man. So a little preface: we were filming on our 9th day in Alpine. There's this beautiful place called Big Hill that's the first kind of big hill, I guess, outside of Alpine, headed to Terlingua. We were filming our big, like, tent pole scene there. It's not quite the climax. It's kind of like a whatever the moment is right before the climax, leading up to it. And so that took a long time to film, and we only had about 15-20 minutes left before the sun was going down. We had one last scene that we needed to get actually in Marfa, along Highway 67. We just needed like a little bit of like rim of light around the perimeter, just so that we could get a little bit better exposure. And so we're rushing, and in rushing, I forget to take the prop license plates off of the picture car. No. And I'm just hoping that no one notices, and I'm speeding too, obviously, because it's about a 20-minute drive to Marfa from where we were. And that's how much time we had before sunset. So we're headed that way, and lo and behold, I get pulled over by a state trooper, who just takes a sweet ass time, like going through everything. Because I mean, and I get it, like there's a lot of drug trafficking that happens around there, and like fake license plates is like an alarm for him, I'm sure. But gotcha. He ends up giving us a warning. That's fine. But by the time we reach Marfa, it's pitch black and the scene is done. Like, we can't film anything at that point. And I'm so like pissed at this point. Like, I'm sure I said some choice words. I stepped out of the car, and I was wearing this because I actually play a character in the film too, Man in Black agent. So I'm wearing this like old fashioned fedora, and I take and just throw it off into the desert. I don't even fucking care like where it lands, And so Katriva gets out, and she lights up a cigarette, and she looks out over the desert and goes, hey Timothy, what's that over there? And I look out over the Mitchell Flats, which is this portion of the desert where for 150 years the actual ghost lights, the Marfa Lights, have been seen. And I look, and there's this one little dot of orange light. And at first I think, well, it's a ranch out there. It's someone's like floodlight, right? And so we keep watching, and then suddenly it starts to kind of like drift just like this. And then a couple of minutes later, there becomes two lights, and they're both kind of going like this, making these kind of like horizontal figure eight movements. And then suddenly there's three, and then suddenly there's four, and it almost looks like what you classically think of when you think of like a UFO, and you're seeing like a rim of lights around a saucer. And we're going, okay, like we're watching the Marfa Lights, like this is it, no doubt. And then just to like drive it home, and this is through all my research, I knew what to expect. Those four lights split off different directions and just start dancing independently around, making huge, like I would say football field size sweeps out over the desert. And it's hard to know how far away they were, because it depends on how like big they are, I suppose. if I had to guess, it'd be like 2 to 5 miles away. And so there's some of them that are making like vertical figure eights, and there's another one that's doing like little curly cues, and there's another that's just kind of going wherever the hell it wants to. We watched them for 30 minutes doing this craziness until they all sucked back together and became 4 and became 3, became 2, and then 1, and then it flickered off into the dark. It was crazy, man. And it's one of those moments where rarely do you see something that has no explanation. Because a lot of people say they're headlights, and what kind of headlights do that? No, it's some people say swamp gas. That's like the classic cop out explanation. That doesn't work because they're not pockets of gas out in the middle of the desert lighting up, and if they did, you would see it like that, it'd be gone. So I have no idea, dude. And it was I was telling you, I was so angry. I was so just dead exhausted from shooting these long ass days. And by the time it flickered away into the darkness, it was all gone. We were just the magic of filmmaking had returned, and it was cool. And I was like, that's amazing, once in a lifetime experience there. And the cool thing is
if you didn't get pulled over, you would have never seen that, man. So,
no, yeah,
it was
I
a
just
sign,
was
man.
recently there. It is. There it is.
Yeah, it was.
I was just recently thinking about that.
Yeah.
It was, and we ended up not needing the scene either. In fact, I think it's actually a better film without the scene that we missed. So this is the Marfa Lights doing us a favor,
That's amazing, man. Yeah, last day of the shoot, last day everything is going down, and then you finally see exactly what you wanted to see, man. That's poetic, man.
That's absolutely beautiful.
For real.
So what's next, man? I know you said right moment you're crowdfunding to get this feature edited and to do all the effects. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, fortunately, editing is one thing in post-production that I can do competently. So it is edited. We picture locked maybe 3 weeks ago. And what we have left is that we're doing an Indiegogo campaign to raise about $15,000 for color, sound mixing, original score, and special effects. And because it is a sci-fi film, special effects is pretty important.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where we're at. We're almost halfway there. As far as the time left, we're only at 25% as of today.
Okay.
Probably by the time this airs, we'll be further down the road than that. But yeah, we just we need all the help we can get. But we've got really cool perks, like we're giving away props in the film. Probably our coolest perk is, let's see if I've got it here somewhere. Give me a sec. Okay, I'm back. So this is the actual 70s tape recorder that we used in the film. And
nice.
What we're going to be doing is that I'm going to take some of these old vintage tapes, and I'm going to make, this is the prop that we used. I'm going to make them look exactly like this. And we're going to record all of the interview scenes to those tapes, almost like a podcast, except on cassette tapes.
Yes.
Because what you see in the film is that Alex comes home after the death of her father, and she discovers in his now empty house this cassette tape that on it is interviews that her father did with Billy Blair's character Mario back in the 70s about his experience seeing these lights. And so those are the flashback scenes. So we're basically going to take all those flashback scenes and just dub them to tapes. And, I'm probably going to use just like the shittiest recorder that I can, just so that it has, I may even use this one, although I don't want to wear it out, but just so it has that kind of like stressed, garbled, almost so that when you have it, it almost feels like a piece of evidence,
Because it actually was made in the 70s. Yeah.
So that,
Man,
that should be really
cool.
And there won't be any music in it. It's just going to be the dialogue tracks. So
that's awesome. So after this finishes, do you know? Do you expect when the actual release is going to be? Do you have any expectations for that?
Well, so here's what I'm betting on. and this is to be determined on a lot of levels, is
Mhm.
film festivals opening back up again.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, because this is a genre project, sci-fi horror, that most of those happen September to October, November. Is that by that time it's going to be enough people have the vaccine, and just the rules will have relaxed just a little bit, so that in person film festivals will be a thing again. I'm not a fan of virtual film festivals personally.
Yeah.
And so our right now I'm racing for the Fantastic Fest deadline, which of course is in Austin, put on by Alamo Drafthouse. And as far as what I can tell, they seem to be wanting to do an in-person element this year. In that the deadline is in April, so we're just racing for that, trying to get it done, and then of course we'll do a film festival circuit, and then see if we can get distribution through that. I do have some connections with a few distributors that once it's out, we're going to send them a copy just to see what they think. That's always an option, and if all else fails, we'll self distribute through Amazon. But I'm confident that we'll be able to get a distributor. It's just, it's that long game of like, you don't want to take maybe the first one that bites, because it might not be the best,
Of course. Of
So
course. Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
That's also a new game to me too. I know about all of that theoretically, so
of
we'll
course.
see how it actually shakes out.
So what's next after after Ghost Lights releases? What's the next project you're working on? Do you have anything planned?
Well, I mean, I have the feature screenplay that I was trying to produce prior to the Ghost Lights that just didn't really shake out because of 2020. And that one, it's still kind of under wraps right now, so I don't want to say a whole lot, except that it's another modern piece, which I don't know. I guess
That
I'll
man.
do it. It's easier, but it's more expensive, and it's basically an occult horror thriller. By occult, I don't mean like typical like blood in the middle of a pentagram, summon a demon. I mean like ceremonial magic and summoning ancient powers, and the real horror that happens whenever you dive into that kind of darkness. So yeah, it's a really cool project that I'm really excited about, and it's essentially uh, a woman trying to summon a ancient god in order to accomplish something that she wants. So I guess that's basically as much as I'll say there. It's dark as
Gotcha.
fuck. It's probably the darkest film I've ever written. There's a scene I wrote that I actually went, oh God, after I was done writing.
Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah, no, oh, believe me, dude. I was like, where did it? Because sometimes you're writing, you know exactly where you're going, and then suddenly
Yeah.
like you surprise yourself. And I was writing, it's actually um, a sex scene that took a turn, and I was like, oh no, where did that come from? And so I took a break and came back the next day. I was like, well, it belongs, so I guess we're gonna leave that there. So man, I would love to tell you more about that, but it's one of those things I want to make sure that we don't like let the cat out of the bag too soon.
Man, I can't wait to see it. It sounds interesting as fuck.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so that's the next plan, is just trying to get funding for that. And I think as far as Spectrograph goes, we actually have another feature film in production right now that John
Hell
Francis
yeah.
McCullough is heading, and it's actually a action comedy with lots of like kung fu and firefights and stuff, and that's not really my bag. But
That's not
it
something I
is
would love.
it is cool. It's a lot of fun, and so I'm producing that. It's mainly his creative baby, and he's also the
Mhm.
lead in that. And we'll be making an announcement probably in the next couple of months about that. But because that is an action film, takes so much to produce, we've been kind of only doing it on the weekends here and there. So that one, is not a 10-day shoot. It's a legit 30 to 40-day shoot, except that we've had to spread it out over a long time. So
Gotcha.
How's the planning going? Like whenever you do a feature, like do you try to get as many days as possible, or are you limited depending on the budget?
Yeah, I mean, budget is everything. You know, we for the Ghost Lights, we basically looked at, you know, okay, I had about 7,000 to spend. How far will that go? And you know, and so I am big on budgeting. You know, I'm big on planning. You know, that's not something you rush. And so, you know, we laid out a schedule, and I think I probably did a normal schedule to begin with, just to look at. So about 18 to 20 days, roughly 5 pages a day, and that was too expensive, so I cut it back, and then I cut it back again. And by the time I actually fit the budget, it was about 10 days. Which, you know, thankfully it kind of worked out, because a big portion of the Ghost Lights is the flashback interview scenes, and I knew that if we really shot it in the right way, we ended up shooting it multicam, that we could knock that out in a single day. And so that was like, I've never done that many pages in a day. It was like 18 pages in a day. Crazy, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
like 5 is like, you know, a full day. So, but that really had to do with, you know, the way we decided to shoot it, but also the talent of the actors, you know, just being able to put the performance out there. And I also just didn't storyboard that day. I just thought, okay, it's 2 people at a table. Let's just get creative in the moment, shoot it like a documentary, almost like move around, you know, handheld. Let's not stress about angles on that day, and that was the main way we were able to do that. If I had really strenuously storyboarded that scene like I did the rest of the film, it would have been a much longer. We probably would have taken 3 days to shoot that, and then I would have blown my budget and probably put the film on a credit card, which wouldn't have been good.
So how different would the movie be? Let's say if you had triple the budget. Let's say you had about $20,000 to $30,000. How different would the film look? Very different, do you think? Yeah, just a quick answer, I guess.
um I don't think so, honestly.
Nice. Okay,
You know, I
that's good.
mean, we
That's
might
good.
have you know, put a little bit more into lighting, you know.
Hmm.
As it stood, we really depended on natural light a lot for this.
Gotcha. Especially for outdoor scenes, makes sense.
Yeah,
Right.
but I mean, the majority of the film is in a car and in the
Yeah.
desert, so I don't know that it would have looked a whole lot different, you know. Yeah, I mean, it was a film crafted for the money we had, you know. So if you put more money into it, I don't know what would have been different exactly. Maybe I would have used a nicer camera. I don't know. But we shot on a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and it looks beautiful.
Nice.
So I don't know what else we would have used, honestly.
You know, honestly, I'm thinking about buying one of those, and seeing you shoot a whole feature on it, kind of basically just cements it for me that my tax money, I'm gonna use that to pay for a
Yeah,
film.
man, it's such a good camera, and you know, the noise level is pretty low. One thing I would say though is that because it is a horror film, we shot in a lot of dark environments.
Hmm.
Pushing the exposure on that in post, you do start to kind of see the sensor in the image. So we're definitely going to have to like do some noise reduction in
Of
DaVinci,
course.
and I'm thinking of even adding like a 35 millimeter like film grain to it to just help with that. So that's my only like. It's not really a complaint because it's still a really nice image. It's just like some like higher end cameras, when you push the exposure, it kind of just looks like film grain. And unfortunately, with the Blackmagic camera, it looks more digital the harder you push the exposure. So,
Uh,
you know, it's just, you know, it's something you can work with. Fortunately, DaVinci has some great tools for dealing with noise. So
Gotcha. Well, Tim, man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. Finding out about your first feature is, I mean, very enlightening because I haven't shot a feature yet, and I've been thinking about it, playing with the idea here and there, and just hearing people's experiences about their first features is, definitely helping out with me.
yeah,
oh,
yeah. You know, I would say that it is. You don't know how it's going to be until you do it. And you know, our longest day was like 18 hours.
God.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so you just have to everybody has to know what you're in for at that point. Like if you're shooting a micro budget feature, you've just got to like accept that at some point you're gonna go, what the hell am I doing to myself?
Well, we recently had a friend that we interviewed. He pushed himself right to the limit where he ended up in the hospital for like heart palpitations,
Oh
just
man,
taking a
that's
bunch of
not
energy
good.
drinks
That's
or
not
whatever
good.
he could to stay up.
Yeah, I drink a lot of coffee. And I kind of reached a moment like that on that day that was like 18 hours. And I reached a point where I pulled my co-producer aside, John Francis, and was like, dude, how are you guys doing? Am I pushing you too far? And he looked at me and go, dude, like we're all living the dream right now. This is fun. And honestly, like the pressure tends to be just on the producer and director. We're the ones that are going, oh my God, this is so awful. How are we going to survive? While everybody else, if they're really in for it and having a great time and just living the adventure. I think because the weight of the world doesn't seem to be on them, they're the ones that are probably okay. But it's always good. I mean, as a director, I always want to check in with people because I was really feeling it at that point. I wanted to make sure I wasn't like dragging the rest of the team down. So it's special situations like that on most feature films, like there's a big burden to make sure that you're not pushing too hard. And I think we all were just kind of like, we had this sort of like team mentality where we're all in it. Let's make this happen no matter what. Yeah, it's good. Nobody got sick. Nobody got COVID. That was a big relief as well. But yeah, if you guys want to check out the Indiegogo campaign, you can just search the Ghost Lights on Indiegogo, and then our website spectrographfilms.com, and then we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's SPECTROGRAPH films.
We'll also make sure to put in our social media so people can find it, whoever listens to our podcast. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. It's a wonderful project. Like I said, I cannot wait to see it. Anyways, man, Tim, thank you so much for doing this interview with us, my man. You have been amazing. Like I said, hearing from you has been great. George, thank you for co-hosting. And guys, do you have anything else you want to plug real quick, or was that all your plug-in?
Do you have anything else?
No, just help us out. We're a little behind on our goal right now. We need some love to get there. So
yeah, guys, Indiegogo, look up the Ghost Lights, Tim Stevens' first feature film. It is, like I said, it's amazing. I've already backed it. Probably gonna do another round on my next paycheck, honestly, because like I said, I just love the idea of it. It's so wonderful. So anyways, like I said, team, thank you so much. George, thank you so much. Adrian, thank you for manning the camera, man. You're the real MVP of this thing right here. And guys, you will hear us next week. Thank you so much. See ya.